Speaker is Dr. Herbert Mandla. He is founder and chairman of Africa Entrepreneurs Network. We welcome you, sir, here at Khwaja Freed University. And over to you.
Good morning to the media and good morning to everybody. Good morning. I see on my program, I think Vice Chancellor of Khwaja also University is here and other distinguished academicians who are here. I am humbled and honored to be part of this important symposium where we're talking about Innovate to Educate, a global symposium for tomorrow's leaders. I am grateful for the speaker who just left. Professor was talking of some very important aspect as we look at how to innovate in terms of education as we prepare or as we bring about the leader for tomorrow. My task this morning is to be talking on a topic that I am literally sure is important as we look at innovation for tomorrow's leaders. I'm going to be talking briefly to you all about empowering girls and women through education. Humbled to listen to Professor who just spoke. He spoke a very important aspect where we also need to look at the curriculum. In my travels in Global South and in being involved in various institutes, both in Africa and beyond, I found out I think there has not been much deliberate effort to make sure as we emerge collectively, the women and the girl child in terms of education are also given access to be part of this growth that is taking place. I can give an example. In Kenya currently, in most of the universities in Kenya, for a female to get a PhD degree, it's very difficult. I mean, to find a girl child to access, when they enroll, most of them, yeah, they are there. But by the time of graduation, you'll find most of the girls or the women have fallen by the wayside, which is really sad, as we believe that when we globally impact, especially looking at what Professor has just said, the developing world and us who are in the Global South, I think there's not been much effort done in terms of making sure we're not just looking at educating the girl child or the woman, but it is for them also to be involved in key educational positions or structures. I think it would really completely be a place of empowering them. And why empowering them? I think the reality is that in both the Global South, you'll find, I'm sure Pakistan inclusive, many a times the access to education has been emphasized on the man, on the boy child. Many a times we say because he's the leader for tomorrow, and the woman has always been relegated to being the housewife. But in terms of skill and knowledge, I tend to think, and I believe they both need to be able to access the resources. And much has not been done still around empowering girls and women through education. And I believe this global symposium, as we speak of leaders for tomorrow, I mean, we have to look at this and begin to address it. I believe empowering girls and women through education is a very critical step towards achieving innovation through education, because gender equality and promoting social and economic development is important. It should be inclusive around every aspect of society in terms of representatives. So I tend to think we need probably to look at issues like access to education, literacy programs, in terms of women accessing them. Financial literacy and skills training, many a times it's not happening around the woman. And I've found out, I give an example of South Africa. We've got a number of universities in South Africa. And I think at the moment, South Africa has in Africa the biggest stats of unemployed youths. But if you look at it, There's a whole lot of emerging women business people, or much of the GDP in Africa. And giving an example, in South Africa, in my travels in Africa, you'll find women are contributing more. But when you look at the access of education for women, it's not really happening at a level that would really inclusively mean women are partakers, are not just spectators or cheering, but are partakers of championing the cause in the direction of education. I was in DRC Congo not some very long time ago, late last year. I also found out DRC Congo with wealth of resources. Most of the women in terms of academics at various universities, you find most of them, even after finishing or graduating universities, they're just doing small jobs that are not really recognizable as playing a huge part. Recently, I was approached by a certain group of women, I think almost about 10,000 in a certain province. They formed cooperatives. Among these women who formed cooperatives, I think 95% of them are academicians, and they want to grow in their respective chosen fields around academics, but they don't access other further studies opportunities, which I think is something relatable in the global south. We need to advocate how we can have for equal access to quality education for the girls and the women child, which is not just educating them, but they have to get enough quality education as the boy child or as the men are. There are many barriers, I think, that I've found out both in the global south, and I'm sure Pakistan relates to these, the cultural norms, which I've just mentioned, and the economic constraints. In South Africa, you find that a woman probably cannot be owning land because of the cultural norms and economic constraints. They probably do not have the resources to be able to do that. We also are dealing with gender stereotypes. So we need to make sure empowering women and girl children through education is something that is of priority concern, that we need to deliberately work on and encourage on, and bring it into our curriculum. To capture that part where we feel women are not partakers or are not participating as they should, whereby I believe they have the ability and the energy to also contribute and come up with something. We need to bring in a lot of literacy programs around empowering women through education. I was in Zambia sometime 2 years ago. I found out most of the women who are having also cooperatives or having non-governmental organizations, it's women mostly involved. Because the doors for other projects, the doors for other jobs in the academic world are literally shut or closed, maybe because of being a woman. I think it's far gone now that we can continue to function at that level in terms of the academician world. We need to implement these literacy programs to many women and girls, and also have the ability to recognize that literacy is a fundamental skill that should not be of a certain group of people. And when literacy programs are involved, I tend to think and believe that economic empowerment begins actually to be huge. But why most of the countries in the global south are at a level whereby they've not been able to create such a platform where the girl child and the woman contribute meaningfully to economic empowerment is because access to resources is not there. Literacy programs are not there. Financial literacy is also not there. You find a whole lot of them, they get involved in projects, but to manage their money or their resources is not really something that they are able to do. So we need also to come up with financial literacy and be able to give them skills training. Basically providing financial education and skills training for the girl child and the woman to make informed decisions around their finances. And this helps us encouraging entrepreneurship. I think it's easy at an institute, at a university level, that we can deal with such issues and begin to see results and impact of such deliberateness that we can do. That's why I agree with Professor. I think I've seen that in Africa, most of the curriculums that we're working with that have been tailored are not really inclusive. And the curriculums are not really having an end product of having a woman or a girl child who's not just gone to varsity, but who has been given knowledge which is empowering them to be able to make decisions. And this is really sad. You can go to countries like Angola, 90% of the people who are also in the captains of industry, you find it's only men. And a very few women, well educated, but behind the scenes access to platforms whereby they can contribute meaningfully educationally. Even though they have spent some years in the corridors of education, they are still not able to get them. And I think it's unfortunate that it's happening in the global south. It's something that has to be addressed. And the right place to address such issues, it is at universities, which I believe Khwaja University can be a huge contributor in such platforms. We also need to have mentoring programs. I mean, there have to be established mentoring programs that connect these women and girl child to successful role models. Successful role model women who have made it at the top of the corporate world, at the top of the academician world. I think it's important that it should happen that way because it will help a whole lot of young girls and young women. In my travel, both in the Middle East, in some South American countries, it's a huge achievement for a woman to get married. It's good to get married, it's good to have family. But is that all that a woman and a girl child can contribute to society? Which, of course, I don't think it is. So when we celebrate this day, I think educationally, we need to make sure we deliberately deal with aspects that have been neglected. And many a time, unfortunately, in the global south, we always give an excuse to the previous colonizers that they did not do enough. Okay, many years ago, I think a lot of our countries in the South have had independence. My question is, okay, if the colonizers did their part, where are we now as countries? After many years of independence, have we started addressing these issues for the purpose of helping the girl child or changing the narratives that have been put? It doesn't make any sense to keep complaining of something probably that 40 years, 30 years later, we could begin to start some programs that can actually change and empower. That's why I was very much encouraged hearing Professor speaking about the curriculum. I've always been talking, it's the curriculum that we are working on, that we are using, both at universities, at high schools and junior education. Is it really empowering everybody? Or it's selectively doing something not necessarily for having the entire human being, not as a male or a female, but just the entire human being who has access to education, feeling empowered? Are we really giving knowledge? Are we really giving the fundamentals of someone being a champion, a leader in society, when they have been empowered through education? So there's a whole need to look at the curriculums that we're currently working on. One of the ways that we can also do to empower women in education as we innovatively create and have the emerging leader for tomorrow is also through health education. I mean, it's an important aspect to integrate health education into the curriculum. It's important that we have these addressing topics that we all know are issues that are not really spoken about, reproductive education, reproductive health education, and nutrition. Why do we have to bring these around in education? I think to ensure the well-being of these women. I think for us to be accomplishing and achieving enormous tasks, as girl children and women. I think the understanding of health plays an important part in education, in economic building. All of these things, they are very important, that we need to be able to look at them and see where the woman is lagging behind. And some of the reasons, I think we can't keep complaining also about political leaders, because at the universities we have the resources, we have the ability to change the narrative and produce a woman who's received out in the world empowered, full of knowledge. It doesn't make sense many times. I keep referring to what Prof just said. I might be having several degrees, but what knowledge are you reflecting out there? I mean, there is that tendency now that we have girl children and women just being made to do university certificates, but at the end of the day, or maybe generally, not just even the girl child and the woman, both the boy child and the man and the woman, just acquiring a degree certificate. But what knowledge is reflected in the paper that you have? It's another thing to have a certificate. It's another thing to show them knowledge. So I'm of the opinion empowering girls and women through education is an incredible task, which is doable. But the change has to start at academic institutes, because they have the resources to change everything around it. And we also need to empower the girl child and the woman around legal aspects and policy and advocacy. A lack of knowledge around these, it causes a whole lot of issues. Namibia has a population about 2.5 or 2.6, the recent Sentinel survey that they did. But you'll find out of that, the population comprises more of women and girl children or the youth. But if you look at unemployment rate, it's saying, not unemployment rate, it says 1.7 million people in Namibia are living under poverty. I mean, it's shocking. And the 1.7 million out of the 2.5 plus million are women. And then my question is, and a lot of the women either have gone through the corridors of education at different institutes. It's the access of the resources. There is not enough intentional empowering of the girl child, of the women. How do we then look at the future and producing leaders who are supposed to be playing a huge role in economic development? So by all means, I think we need to be able to do that. One of the most important aspects that I believe, just conclusively speaking about empowering education, is promoting higher education. I mean, days are gone by, I refer again to what Prof just said, it's not just going through a teaching or a lecturing exercise. I mean, it's about how are we impacted with the knowledge. After having sat at a certain lecture, I mean, you'd want to get knowledge. You just don't want to have jargon and terminologies. But is what you're getting usable in the educational world or in the corporate world? If a woman emerges as a political leader, has she been equipped enough? Has she been given enough knowledge to step up and lead and be received by men? Because the attitude of the society there is harsh. If a woman emerges as a leader and there's not been enough knowledge empowered around her, they are judged harshly because of gender. And so I think we need to encourage girls and women, in fact, to pursue education. One of the things that we can do by providing scholarships that are literally targeting women and girl children, because unfortunately in the global South, they always believe that the man is the decision maker, is the head of the family, rightfully so. But in terms of accessing resources, do we really need to look at just at me as a boy child? I'm born in a family of 9. And I am the 8th in the family of 9. I have 4 sisters, I have 5 brothers. But in Africa, generally, you'd find if there's economic hardships around, who do we send to school? Normally, they would say, either we send the boy to a very good school, the girl child, let's look for maybe a school we can afford because she's going to get married. And the boy is going to be a leader in the in various captains of industry, is going to be a lecturer at a university. But is that really how we want to have leaders tomorrow develop? that we are looked at with the eye of gender, or not looked at in the eye of the knowledge that we have acquired over the years. In conclusion, I think it's important that we look at it and also encourage global partnerships for the benefit of these organizations. In Africa, I found out that if men have an organization, they want to access loans from banks, they have ways and means to knock at different doors and be able to access it. But for a women cooperative or a woman emerging as a strong leader, either in mining, either in this aspect, you find there are very few women involved in mining. Is it because they don't want to be involved in mining? They do. But I think these are doors that have been shut through lack of education around them, or the awareness of the importance of education. Most of the times I found that in developing world, the jobs that women have been taught to be good at is either she is a teacher, it's either she is a nurse, it's either, these are jobs that are said to be for women. It is because of the type, I agree with Prof, the type of curriculums. The curriculums should actually be creating an awareness of what people have to do or need to do in terms of pursuing academic options. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much.